Well, hi, Hannah. Thanks very much for making time to talk to us about your journey with Flint Vineyards. I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
No, thank you for asking me. No, it's great to be here. Thank you.
I'm fascinated by this journey because lots of people have crazy ideas like, I'm going to start a vineyard. I'm going to start, I don't know, a food brand. I'm going to jack it all in and do something completely different. And most of us either don't do it because we're too scared, or we do it and it goes horribly wrong because we haven't really thought it through. But you have got to the point where, your wines are award winning and, you're making this thing work. So I'd love to know, if we rewind to the beginning of your journey, how did you start and where did this idea of we'll start a vineyard come from?
It was quite a long time in the making. So although we did take an idea that was a bit of a pipe dream and make it happen, it didn't happen overnight. So Ben and I, wine was just something that Ben and I were interested in as a couple. But there's plenty of couples that love drinking wine together and trying out new wines. But we took it to a bit of a new level when we went travelling for a year. We were living in London. We decided to take a year out from our jobs, and we went travelling around the Southern Hemisphere. And it wasn't the sole purpose of our trip, but we did end up visiting all of the major winemaking regions in the Southern Hemisphere. So
Where Chile, Chile,
Chile, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa.
Oh yeah, that's a good wine tour.
Yeah, it was. And we actually, while we were out there, we had a bit of extra time, and we worked for a month at one of the big vineyards in Mendoza in Argentina. I think it was at that point really that a seed was possibly sown that made us sort of think about it in a different way. We learned a lot in that month and lived on the vineyard, so saw sort of what vineyard life was like. It was still a family-run vineyard, even though it was a huge operation by that point. So there's a lot of lovely things to take from that. And we had all these ideas in our head, and then we came back to England and reality set in. We went back to our old jobs, basically. Because we needed some money. So I used to work in the travel industry. I worked mainly on the sort of hotel side, contracting hotels for some of the big tour operators. And then Ben worked in IT as an IT consultant. So very different to what we're doing now. But when we came back and we started these old jobs again, Ben started doing some evening courses in wine. So he was mainly on the tasting side, but taking his knowledge to a new level, I guess. And then it was during that time, very quickly, we got sick of our jobs again, and Ben started dreaming again and decided he'd like to take the wine thing a bit further. And he spoke to a lot of people and thought about maybe going down the route of being an apprentice at a vineyard, starting at the very bottom and saying, We'll work for free. I think I was included in the bargain. We'll come and work for free if you teach me how to make wine, basically. And we had a few job offers along those lines. But everyone we spoke to in the English wine industry said there's one place you should start with, and that's Plumpton College in Sussex, which is the only winemaking university in England, not surprisingly. So he went to find out about a distance learning course they offered. And then he came back that evening and said, actually, I want to enroll on the 3-year BSc course, viticulture and oenology, so the growing of grapes and the science of wine. And I was horrified, and I thought I didn't really understand how we could do that. He earned a lot more than me, so he was the main breadwinner. But I was also tempted I knew that something exciting might come of it. I quite liked the idea of a change at the time. So we upped enough. We moved down to Sussex, and he started the course, and I luckily got a job in travel near Gatwick. So it all worked out perfectly. And and our lives changed, I suppose, because he did the 3-year course, intensive studying, very, very scientific, actually much more scientific than anyone would probably think. But then he got some amazing practical experience as well. So he worked every summer. He did a 2 or 3 month placement abroad. He was in California one year, Napa Valley. He went to Greece one summer, and then when he graduated, his first real job was assistant winemaker at a chateau in Beaujolais in France. And that's the sort of thing that, I'd had in mind when he started going down this route that could lead to exciting trips like that. So, and I was actually pregnant with our first child then, so it fitted in with me. I took maternity leave and we went to Beaujolais.
Wow.
And that was really interesting because
But of course, you couldn't drink then, of course.
So a few sips.
You're allowed to sip, yes, it's true.
I was hoping that the rules would be a bit more relaxed in France, but no, exactly. So it's very, very interesting for Ben in terms of winemaking in Beaujolais, because his experience at Plumpton had taken him down quite a scientific winemaking route, which is great to get that grounding, very technical. And then again, his most recent placement had been in Napa Valley in California, which was very sort of modern equipment, high-tech winery. And then he was straight into Beaujolais, where it's very traditional, sort of throw out the rule book. This is how we do it. This is how we've done it for years. And he kept saying, oh, no, but I've learned this. And there was it was just a real, not a clash of ideas, but it was just a very, very different experience for him. But actually those two elements of his winemaking, jumping forward a lot in the story, is actually what is the reason behind our logo. So our logo is the Venn diagram with the two circles interlocking, and the two circles represent the marriage of science and tradition in Ben's winemaking now.
That's great. I really like that. I like the idea of a scientific grounding and then just this, tradition passed down from person to person. It's a great combination.
Yeah, so it's his sort of experience has served as well. And so when we were out in France wondering about our next move, and it was tempting to stay in France. There's lots of vineyards for sale in France, but I think it would have been it's highly competitive because there's just vineyards everywhere. We saw an opportunity to come back to England. We were drawn back here for two reasons, mainly because it's just such an exciting time in the English wine industry. So things had really improved probably over the last sort of 10 years, leading to that point. So we're now talking 2014, around this time. The 10 years previous to that, things had really improved. People were putting a lot more investment into their equipment in the vineyard and the winery. But more than anything, it was the knowledge that had improved. So every year there was a whole host of young winemakers graduating from Plumpton College who had this experience that Ben was lucky enough to have, who travelled and not only studied their craft, but also got experience abroad and brought ideas back. So it was that combined with the financial investment that meant that English wine had just improved in quality hugely. And then therefore there was now a market because people actually liked it and were willing to spend the money on it. I think the problem maybe in the sort of 60s and 70s and maybe into the 80s, people had planted vineyards in a sort of hobby, with hobbyist sort of ideas and lacking knowledge and had made bad wine that had put people off English wine for a long time. So it's a good time for us to come back and we knew that, not like Beaujolais, it's still a bit of a novelty here. We saw an opportunity, particularly in this region where we have moved to. So we're in Norfolk, and Ben had identified the east of England as a bit of a hotspot for wine making when he was studying. Although today is a terrible example, it's actually the driest and sunniest region in the UK, which is ideal for vines because in England, we can have the problem of vines being a bit too vigorous because we are a bit wetter, but with it being, so anything to help stem that vigor is good. One of the factors, is lower rainfall. So that's one of the reasons we were drawn here. And we saw an opportunity to make still wines here, whereas down in Kent and Sussex, they focus on sparkling wines because of their soil, which is more chalky, which is more similar to Champagne. Here in East Anglia, with the drier climate, we're focusing more on aromatic still varieties. So we began looking for a site. I don't know why or how we thought we could do it because we didn't have much money at all. We had a small amount of savings. And I think to start with, we thought we'd probably just plant a really small area of vines, carry on working alongside that, and then build the business up slowly. But what in fact happened was very different. So we came back from France and one Christmas, and we were speaking to people, asking anyone if they knew of any suitable land. So our criteria was free draining soil and a south facing slope. And a lot of people were saying, well, Norfolk is very flat and full of clay. But we spoke to a farmer locally who had a plot that he thought might be suitable. So we met him and went to see the plot, and we immediately saw the potential for it. So it's has got a small slope. It's not the biggest slope, but it's a slope for Norfolk. So it's got a gentle south-facing slope, and the soil was full of sand, gravel, and flint. So we're now called Flint Vineyard, but full of flint, and actually a very poor arable site, but perfect for vines where you want poor soil. You basically want the vines to struggle and the roots to go down. Yeah, they're not good in fertile soil. They just become too vigorous. So you want them to struggle. So it was a really good soil. And we did some analysis. We were really happy with the site. But also during that meeting, it became apparent that the farm adjacent to the plot was pretty much sitting empty, and all these buildings here were available for use as well. So the whole thing, I think the reason we actually took this idea and made it happen, there was an element of luck, because we were in the right place at the right time. This opportunity came along, and we thought, if we're ever going to have a vineyard, this is the moment, this is the opportunity to do it, because it not only turned out that the farmer, who is called Adrian Hipwell, he had this land. He was also very keen to invest in the business. So we actually ended up doing a deal, and we're 50-50 partners, put in 50% of the capital, provided the land and the buildings, which, we could never have done it without that.
That's brilliant. So if we fast forward to today, where are you now with the wines? How many wines are there? And you've won several awards, haven't you?
Yeah, so we're just about to release our fourth vintage. So for anyone who knows a bit about wine, when you plant the vines, which we did, we planted the vines in 2016, it takes several years, 2 to 3 years, before you can actually get a crop. But we put our winery in year one, and we began working with 2 or 3 other local vineyards to source our fruit from them while we were waiting for our own vines to produce fruits. So we began making wine in the first year, which was 2016, and then that was released the following year. So yeah, we now make 4 wines. We have 3 still wines. We make 2 different whites. One of them is a grape variety called Bacchus, which is a real sort of speciality of the region. It's become the signature white wine for England, the signature grape variety for English white wines. It just really suits our climate and does particularly well here in East Anglia. But it's quite similar to a Sauvignon Blanc. It's lovely, crisp, aromatic, refreshing wine. It's been really popular. So we focus quite heavily on Bacchus, and the vines we've planted. We've now got 26,000 vines, and I'd say about half of them are Bacchus vines. So we focus on that. We make another white, which has been barrel aged, and then we have a red Pinot Noir, and that was because of Ben's experience in Beaujolais. He really wanted to make a red, even though it can be more challenging in England. And lastly, we have got a sparkling, which is a sparkling rosé. And yeah, it's just there's a real demand for English wines. And I think we have been fortunate with the tying in with the real focus at the moment for people to buy local produce, because all the best restaurants in Norfolk, which is where we focus initially, they've got these amazing menus centered around Norfolk produce, and then they're looking for Norfolk wines, but they have to be good. People won't just buy local stuff because it's local. The quality's got to be there as well. So
where are you selling mostly? Are you selling into retailers or into restaurants or direct off the website? What gets the most sales?
In the first couple of years, it was definitely mostly direct from the vineyard. We sell a small amount on our website. That's an area we could definitely grow. But we do tours and lunches at the vineyard, and we've done that from the first year. So we sold most of it here as we've increased our volume. So we've doubled our volume every year, and we're now up to 30,000 bottles. So it's not possible to keep that high percentage of direct sales with such a large number of bottles now. So we probably sell more, but we definitely sell more to the trade now, probably about 70% to the trade. And that's a combination of locally we distribute the wines ourselves in Suffolk and Norfolk to mainly high-end restaurants and some retailers. And then we work with Berry Brothers and Rudd, who are one of the oldest fine wine merchants in the world. And we're really lucky to be snapped up by them in our second year. So they distribute our wines in London and nationally. They deal with the rest of the country for us.
Yeah. I've got a deli near me. It's very nice somewhere. I live near Shoreditch, and and they major on. They like to promote English wines, and so I bought an English sparkling wine from there a while back for a party. I can't remember what it was, and so I think it's quite fashionable at the moment. So it's good timing for you.
It does feel like good timing. I have to admit, I think we've had luck in a few areas, as well as it being hard work and planning. I think there has been an element of being in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
And you've got a club on the site, because this is quite interesting. I'm always keen to talk to people about how the mechanics of finance and marketing and stuff works, so people can learn from you. And what is the club? And because that contributes a fair bit to.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea for the club, we've called it the Venn Club, which is named after the Venn diagram, which is our logo. But it's a members club, and it's an idea we came up with even before we'd made our first wine, because I think it's the sort of thing that Ben and I would have become members of ourselves if we hadn't done this, if we'd seen it somewhere else. So the idea was to get some people on board really early on, and we felt like it was really important that those members actually joined us, to feel that they were with us right at the beginning of the story. And, they're through the tough early days with us through to the first vintage. So we released our first vintage in April 2017, but we started selling the club in December 16. And the idea of the club is it's £250 a year. And for that £250, members receive 12 bottles of wine every year. And that's a mixed case. But what's special about it is that each year we make 2 or 3 limited release wines in really small batches that no one else can have. We can't even have them. There's none spare. Honestly, I'm not making that up. There's none spare, so it's really limited wines, and that's part of the selection. It means that Ben can try some really interesting ideas every year, or we might have just 1 or 2 amazing barrels that, there's no point blending those in and losing them in a big wine, in 15,000 litres of wine, but we keep those back and we make 300 bottles for members. So it gives us a bit of freedom, but it's really interesting for them to have these unique wines. So they get 12 wines. They can have a certain number of free tour places throughout the year to come and visit and bring friends or family with them. And then they get a 10% discount on any other wines they buy throughout the year. And also our members have become a really important part of our team, actually, because they help with our harvesting and our bottling.
Really?
Yeah, so it now means that when they get the wine as well, when they wait for their case and they get it delivered every June, they feel like they've had a hand in making some of it as well, which is lovely. And they genuinely, really are part of what we do. So, we try and make it fun. If it's a picking day, we have loads of tea and coffee and cake and lunch, and then we do a harvest party every year. So once harvest is all in, we do a big party in the barn for all the members and have live music and a nice dinner. So we try and thank them that way. But they have become real ambassadors, I suppose, for us. So in those early years, those early days, once they joined the club, it felt like they would then go and tell their friends that they joined this club and about this new vineyard starting in Norfolk. And it was a real mix of local people who had joined and then people much further afield that heard about us and just wanted to be part of a startup. And it's grown. We've now got over 200 members. And we're trying to grow that to about 300. So we still want it to be somewhat limited and exclusive.
That is a genius idea. I love it. And it's I think people can learn a lot from that, because if you get those early supporters, like you say, they become ambassadors, they give you some source of income, and that you're going to get very intimate feedback from these people about what they like and don't like, which is not quite, I think better quality than those in the general public, because they won't just make some offhand comment and run away. They're going to give you meaning, like people do on social media. It's like, it's rubbish. And so that's genius. And the fact that I think also what people love to be able to buy is a story. So people, by saying, particularly if they've come along and they've been involved in a picking day or a harvest day or something, you go like, I helped make this wine, but I'm at your own dinner party and you're about to pour it for your friends, go like, oh, I helped to make this in some way, and I'm a supporter of this. I've been involved with this startup from the beginning. And that's exciting. People will pay £250, frankly, just for that story and that warm, fuzzy feeling. It's really important. Yeah, no, we're really pleased. And I think it was very important to help bring that early revenue in, but honestly, everything else that it's brought since, and the sort of good feeling about what we're doing, and like you said, the constant feedback from people that have been there from the beginning. No, it does create a really nice feeling, hopefully for everyone involved. Yeah. And what else have you done in terms of marketing? Because marketing is your department, isn't it? And what have you done in terms of marketing to try to get traction and get people to actually hear about the wine? What's worked well for you?
Okay, I feel the thing. So I didn't actually really have a massive marketing background. I'd done small amounts, but nothing like this. So I was sort of feeling my way as I went along. What certainly helped in the early days when we were just trying to create a bit of a buzz about this new vineyard starting, I would find an angle to write about, and I'd just write a press release. And I did, run it past a couple of friends who worked in journalism to sort of get an idea of. And also, I've been sent press releases for various things, so I sort of saw how they did it. So I'd send press releases to local press, creating a story out. We got a couple of grants in the early days. When the first vines went in, just key sort of moments in the story. And I couldn't believe how much interest there was from the local press. Local radio came several times. Local newspapers came and took pictures and wrote about it. And that really helped. Obviously, that's locally, not nationally, but that really helped in the early days just to get our name about. And then once you've got those press articles on the wall, it just gives you a bit more sort of gravitas when people are visiting and that kind of thing. So definitely using the local press. I did try placing some adverts when we first started doing tours, but I found that print advertising didn't really, or hasn't ever really worked for us. I'm not saying that's some sort of blanket rule. Maybe I was wrong, but we've just never had anything back from it. What has really worked, and it won't be any surprise to anyone, is social media. And I think I can't imagine starting a business without that. I mean, for all those people that used to have to do it with social media.
Which channels do you major on? Which ones have had the biggest impact for you, do you think?
So we started just on Facebook, and we started that even when we were still living in France, when the idea was we were just starting the idea and coming up with a name before we even moved back here and set up. So we just started really slowly building up a following. Then soon after that got into Instagram and Twitter, and now I use all three. I've tried LinkedIn, haven't found it as successful for our business, but I'm still quite new to LinkedIn. But Instagram, certainly we get the most traction with. We get new followers all the time, so our followers are growing much quicker on Instagram than any other channel. It could be because there is the opportunity for a lot of good images, I suppose, with what we're doing and good videos, which I find are much more effective on Instagram. Twitter for us is much more about the trade. So a lot of the wine industry use Twitter, and that's useful for keeping in the loop. But in terms of talking to customers, I think that's less important, but it has maybe got some good contacts within the trade. And Facebook's just very important locally. I think that's been the main thing. When we do events, we found that local people use Facebook a lot. So a combination really of all three. And now we've got quite a lot of supporters through word of mouth, because the number of tours we're doing has increased every year. Certainly within Norfolk and Suffolk, word of mouth has been really important. Not the sort of none of the avenues that I initially thought, really.
And so you don't run any adverts on social media or Google at the moment?
No, no, we don't. And I found when I have tried advertising on social media, again, I haven't had much traction with advertising. I don't know whether it's because people are not so keen when they see something sponsored. But no, we just have much more impact with organic posts and followers. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, and on Instagram, you're Flint Vineyards, are you?
Just Flint Vineyard. Yeah. Yeah. On all channels are just Flint Vineyard. Actually, it hadn't been taken. We're very lucky.
Yeah. No, that's good. So, if people want to check out what you're doing, they should go and have a look at that. What's it been like working as a couple, as a husband and wife team? I know some people fear going into a business with their partner. Because now you're kind of spending every waking hour during the day and evening with each other. Have you had to negotiate that at all? Has it happened fairly naturally, or what's it been like?
I will be completely honest. It's been really, really hard.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's been really hard, and it's the time that we have sort of taken on this project. There's been a lot of other things happening. Like, we've now got 2 young children. So one of them was born the year we set up. The second one was born the year we set up the business. So as we set up the business, we had a newborn, a 2-year-old, and we'd moved back from France. And obviously we're doing everything for the first time. And if I look back on the first couple of years, I will be honest, I don't have the fondest memories. Starting it all up, because everything felt really hard. We were just knackered all the time. And of course we argued. And yeah, we had worked together before, but this is a new thing. And there's so much money at stake this time, and not even just our own money. So I think it's fair to say that we both struggled with the pressures individually and as a couple. And we actually saw a business coach, which helped quite a lot actually with how we work together. Because it was really affecting our relationship, and it still does sometimes, but he made us see that really it was coming down to the fact that we were just sort of different personality types, and we worked differently, and we just needed to understand each other a bit more. So if Ben's being what I would see as sort of snappy and short with me, and I take offence and take it personally, actually that's just how he works. And I've never been in a director's meeting with him before, and I didn't know that's how he worked. He's just much more direct and to the point. I'm much more emotional. So that business coaching did definitely help see us through quite a difficult patch. And we now try and have a weekly directors meeting where we sort of leave the farm and the vineyard and go somewhere else to a neutral environment, and we raise ourselves up out of all the sort of day-to-day stuff and have a meeting as directors and not husband and wife.
Oh, that's a good tip. Have you investigated personality profiling at all? Because that can be very helpful.
Well, that's what a business coach did, which came to led to these conclusions.
What was you can't remember this? It wasn't Myers-Briggs or
it wasn't Myers-Briggs
DISC or something.
It was a 4-letter acronym.
DISC, DISC.
Yeah, it was DISC.
And I think that's the power of personality profiling, whichever type you use. I write about them in one of my books. It just enables you to understand that somebody can be completely different and not be wrong. And you can be completely different and not be wrong. And so, I can see how that's really helpful. So what are your plans for the future? Have you got anything you want, that you can share that's coming up next for you?
So we're growing the tourism side of the business this summer, really. We've found that we can't really keep up with demand for the tours and the lunches we offer, because we've only previously been doing them on Saturdays and then one day during the week, because obviously we're running the business the rest of the time, and we've only still got a really small team. We've got 1 full-time member of staff and 3 part-time. So we're limited, and we have sort of held that element of the business at bay in a way. But last summer we were fully booked for the whole summer by July. That's right up until September. And we just realised that we really need to capitalise on that. We've built up a lovely environment here where people can sit and have tours and lunches. So we need to make the most of what we've created. So we've just expanded our dining area into the barn that was next door to the tasting room. We're going to have more seating outside. means we'll be able to offer lunch to sort of double the number of people, and also we're going to do more tours during the week, and have other people helping with those. So we've sort of come to the point where it can't always be Ben and I doing everything, which obviously any other business, small business owner will realise and will empathise with.
Oh, that sounds great. So fantastic. And if people want to find out more, they can just go to flintvineyard.com or find you on Instagram and most of the other platforms, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And they can find out about the club and everything else. So thanks, Hannah. I really appreciate that. It's been fascinating. And I think it's, whether anyone's thinking about wine or whether thinking about something else, there's loads to learn there about starting up a business and making it work, particularly if you're working with your partner.
I hope it wasn't too negative.
No, but this is normal. It's good, isn't it? It's good to talk honestly about these things. It's a genuine concern. So it's no point glossing over it. Loads of people worry about what it would be like if they did this.
Yeah, I'd much rather be honest. I think it's more helpful. And if people say, are you okay, or are you stressed, or how's it going, I tend to be more honest now. So I think it's more helpful for people. And if you're honest, then people are honest back, and you can get advice from all sorts of people if you're a bit more open. So yeah, no, absolutely.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.